in either case, Wayne, whether we track or we don't track, we teach them how to behave, because without that, they're at a loss.
We probably don't even recognize it, but we live in a highly surveilled world. Everything around us just kind of points to we were here. Our cell phones track us, different cameras inside of everything from ATMs to doorbells can mark us as a person who's at a place at a specific time. And it's natural then for us as parents to bring that technology home, that we think that we should know where our kids are at all times. But what does it do for our kids, or maybe even us, when we can surveil or track them all the time? I think if we really think about it, we can go down into some dark places. But today on the Celebrate Kids podcast, in this daily segment, Facing the Dark, Dr. Kathy has some good insights for us as parents on how we can address maybe some of our root fears with wanting to surveil our kids all the time, and help us live well in this moment to build muscles of resiliency for our kids as they mature. So let's turn now to Dr. Kathy Cook.
Don't be afraid of the dark. Be careful with stars. Not every light is gonna guide you, baby. Not every light is gonna guide you.
So, Dr. Kathy, about half of parents in the United States say they monitor their adolescents' movements through location tracking apps. According to a study that was published in 2023 in the Journal of Family Psychology, they found that an additional 14% of parents who participated in the study claimed to using the tracking app while their child reported that they weren't being surveilled. This indicates that the monitoring was done really without the child knowing. Experts worry that tracking teens' locations can turn into a slippery slope that can at times hinder a teen's relationships with their parents and ultimately harm their developing a sense of autonomy, as well as it can almost create really a false sense of security. Dr. Kathy, does it matter that our kids know that we're tracking them or not, as this journal kind of purports?
I do think it matters. If you are telling your children, don't lie to me, then you can't lie to them. In a blanket statement, we just can't lie to our children. We believe here at Celebrate Kids that security is the first and foremost founding block of everything. Being trustworthy, worthy of trust. This is why they'll take risks with you in a positive way. This is why they'll pour out their heart to you, and you want to be the one they come to. You don't want them going to somebody else. So if they find out that you've done this behind their back, they'll feel, no, it just won't be good. So I do think it's best that you tell them. Now, it's interesting, right? Because they're going to say, you don't trust me. And now you have to be ready with an answer. You got to have this rehearsed so that you come across as really confident and really sure of yourself. So, and it might be, hey, you've given us no reason yet to not trust you. But the world out there that you're entering into as a new driver has all kinds of, craziness and, bumps in the road, if you will. And we don't always know who you're choosing to be influenced by. So you're right that, we don't trust the system or the situation. So far, we trust you, and praise God. This is so that we can trust. Just makes it easier for us. And actually, I think that you might be glad to know that we know where you are. Like, what if you had a flat tire? And, it would just be easier to find you, et cetera. So maybe you try to spin it in an accurate way. What I think about when I think about this question, when they know that you're tracking them, they can accidentally forget their phone. And here's what I would say. If I was the parent of a kid and I was tracking them and they knew that I was tracking them, and they were over at a friend's house and they left the friend's house to go out and about, and the kid left the phone at the friend's house so that you would think they were still at the friend's house, and you find out later that wasn't the case, there is a consequence for that decision. And if your kid leaves your house to run an errand for you or to go to a party and, oh, I forgot my phone. If you see a pattern of your kid forgetting her phone, that's a bad sign. Because I think that means that she's wanting to escape the tracking, which means she's going somewhere that you would not want her to go. So that's a dangerous sign. And that kid in my home would lose the privilege of leaving the house for a while.
Yeah, Dr. Kathy, I do think that that's really true and helpful. I think it also is something that I think many parents do. I think growing up, my parents would do that just without the use of technology. We would be over at a friend's house and they'd be out, getting groceries or something, and they'd drive by and just make sure the bikes are still there or that we are home. They'd call up the parents and say, "Are you home?" I want to ask maybe a little bit of a bigger question. Is this a good practice for our us as parents to be in, to check on our kids and see where they're at? Or is there a place where we kind of just say, you know what, actually, we just trust our kids until there's a reason not to trust them? Should parents be checking in on them and following up with them like this?
I don't know. I wish you would not have asked me that question. Um, I
You
think, the dreaded, "It depends on the situation." Yeah, there is a part of me that should not suggest to your children you don't trust them. I would admit that. There's a part of me that says, "Don't suggest that you can't trust them." And yet, if you're in a big city, I get the concerned parent. I would ask this. I would ask, have you taught them what to do when they find themselves in a scary situation? Do they know what to do if they feel that they're being followed? Do they know what to do if they're at a park and they believe somebody's being trafficked? Have you taught them 911? Have you taught them to drive to the police station parking lot? I don't know. I would rather, in many cases, I think I'd rather that, well, in either case, Wayne, whether we track or we don't track, we teach them how to behave, because without that, they're at a loss, and that's unhealthy. And I would say to every parent listening, you cannot do this forever. I would pray you don't do it forever. If your child graduates from high school and moves across the country for military or entrepreneurship or track or trade or college, I would pray that then there is this choice for you to let them live their lives, and you'll get a phone call when they're in trouble. So are you as a parent able to move from knowing everything to not knowing? And if that's sounds really scary to you, then don't get started.
Yeah, Dr. Kathy, I do think that those are some helpful things. And it makes me want to ask you maybe a larger question too, in addition to that, because I think that we want to build a sense of autonomy with our kids. But for some of us, the world is just different. It feels more dangerous. There's more at risk oftentimes. How do we build a sense of autonomy for our kids in a world that we probably it's not that we don't trust our kids. I think it's that we don't trust the world and others. How do we build autonomy for our kids or resiliency for our kids when it just feels like the stakes are higher?
Well, let me say that autonomy, independence, so being able to be independent, not meaning that we forsake all authority, but being able to be confidently independent, knowing my values, knowing that if my dad were here, he would say this, knowing that this does not represent the Lord or our family well, therefore I will not do that. So autonomy, independence, is based on teaching the truth to our children. Do we do that? We cannot just mention. There's too much clutter in their head. We have to teach and train them to be well and do well. And autonomy at home, like independence even at home, where they're doing the dishes and we don't have to watch them. They empty the dishwasher and we don't have to inspect them because we've trained them to do things well to the glory of God. Then we hope that those abilities and that passion they develop for righteousness will go out with them as they go out the door. And I think resiliency is the same way. Resiliency, overcoming challenges, that only happens when the kids are challenged and we let them independently figure it out. How do you climb out of the hole, if you will? So resiliency and healthy independence only happen when we stay away when we can, when we expect more from them than they've exhibited before, and we don't hurry up and rescue them. Resiliency happens when kids figure out mistakes happen and there are consequences. So I know of a family where a child had to be suspended from school, and it was really surprising. It's a good kid. Something happened that he was just he was unaware. He wasn't self-aware. He forgot this. He forgot he was in school, and something happened, and he missed a day of school. And the parents did not rescue him. He missed a day of school, and on that day, he didn't get screens. Like, there was a punishment feel to the day. He didn't hang his head. He didn't whine and complain. He didn't throw a fit, because he's been raised to believe that when I make mistakes, there will be consequences for those mistakes. That's what has to happen for our kids to develop resiliency, because you know what, Wayne, it is built. It comes about with experience. And if we never let our kids struggle and we never kind of watch them rise up and then we affirm that, they'll never know how. And then they panic, and then it won't be good for them.
I really love what Dr. Kathy had to say today. It reminded me of a passage that comes out of a story in Genesis. And I'll read from Genesis chapter 50, verse 20. You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good, to accomplish what is now being done for the saving of many lives. Joseph speaks this verse to his brothers after they come to Egypt. Really, they're fearing Joseph's retaliation, and he reassures them, reflecting on how God really used their betrayal to bring about a greater purpose. And in Joseph's journey from slavery to leadership in his position in Egypt, it's really marked by resilience in the face of betrayal and hardship and injustice. And this story kind of reflects that really resiliency involves trusting God's plan, even when we can't understand it, and even when bad things happen. For our kids, the lesson here can be that setbacks are often hurtful experiences, and they don't have to define us, though. Instead, God uses every experience really for good, to bring about a deeper trust and reliance on Him. So maybe in some dark times or some challenging situations, or even as our kids are growing, like Dr. Kathy said, we walk them through these times. We give them a perspective of maybe why we want to surveil them in a different setting or place and track their location, or maybe why we're not, and why we're opening them up to have an opportunity to trust in God. I think when we encourage or help our kids see difficult situations as opportunities for growth and trust God's purpose, it can be really a bright light that shines and cuts through some confusing and dark times that either they're facing now or they're going to go on and face in the future. I want to thank you for listening to the Celebrate Kids podcast, this daily segment, Facing the Dark. On behalf of Dr. Kathy Cook, my name is Wayne Stender. I'm so thankful you're listening with us today, and we're looking forward to seeing you here again tomorrow.